You're not lost. You're just tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. And that's the part nobody explains. At some point, life didn't break you. It didn't collapse. It didn't explode into chaos. It simply became smaller. You still wake up. You still do what's required. You still show up for people who depend on you. But somewhere along the way, you stopped showing up for yourself. Not dramatically, not all at once, quietly. This is how it usually happens. You don't wake up one day feeling empty. You wake up busy, responsible, needed. You start saying things like, "I'll take care of myself later. This phase will pass. I don't have time right now." And none of those decisions feel dangerous. They feel mature. They feel reasonable. They feel necessary. Until years pass and you can't remember the last time you felt fully alive. This disappearance doesn't come from failure. It comes from adaptation, from doing what works, from choosing stability over curiosity, from choosing predictability over possibility. You don't lose yourself in one big moment. You lose yourself one small compromise at a time. You trade excitement for efficiency, desire for duty, expression for control, and slowly you become good at surviving, but not at living. Look at your days. You wake up already tired, not physically, mentally. Your mind jumps straight into tasks, obligations, messages, deadlines. There's no space to ask, "What do I want today?" Only, "What needs to be done?" Days start blending together. Weeks move fast. Months disappear. And one day you realize you've been running on autopilot for far too long. At first you tell yourself, this is normal. Everyone feels like this. This is adulthood. This is responsibility. And maybe that's true. But what no one tells you is that responsibility without identity slowly drains something essential. You're functioning, but you're not connected. You're productive, but you're not present. Relationships change too. You become a role before you remain a person. The reliable one, the provider, the parent, the strong one who doesn't complain. People know what to expect from you, but they no longer know who you are inside. And maybe you don't either. You stop sharing thoughts that feel inconvenient. You stop expressing needs that feel selfish. Not because you don't have them, but because you've learned to minimize yourself. This is where the silence begins. You're surrounded by people, yet you feel unseen. You contribute, but rarely feel acknowledged. You give, but something inside you keeps shrinking. And the scariest part, no one notices, because you're still doing everything right. Your body feels it before your mind does. Low energy, restlessness, a quiet tension that never fully leaves. You're not depressed, you're not broken, you're just disconnected from the part of you that once felt curious, engaged, and alive. Motivation disappears because motivation requires meaning. And meaning fades when you no longer recognize yourself in your own life. Eventually, a dangerous thought appears. This is just how life is now. Not angry, not dramatic, just resigned. You compare yourself to others. You tell yourself you should be grateful. You convince yourself wanting more is immature. And this is where most people stop trying. Not because they don't care, but because they believe it's too late. But here's the truth, no one ever says out loud. You didn't change, you didn't lose your spark. You didn't become someone else. You simply stopped choosing yourself in small, invisible ways. And what was lost quietly can be reclaimed quietly too. You don't need a new life. You don't need to burn everything down. You don't need a dramatic reinvention. You need re-entry into your own choices, your own curiosity, your own agency. One small decision made intentionally. It starts smaller than you think. Choosing one thing each day that isn't about obligation. Speaking one honest sentence instead of staying silent. Creating space where your inner voice can be heard again. Not loudly, not perfectly, just consistently. You don't rebuild yourself through motivation. You rebuild yourself through permission. Permission to feel again. Permission to want again. Permission to matter in your own story. This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you alive. One day in the future, you'll look back at this moment and you'll either remember it as the time you kept going on autopilot, or the quiet turning point when you chose to come back to yourself, not all at once, but enough to change the direction of your life. You haven't disappeared, you've just been waiting, and today is still early enough to begin, and slowly, something else begins to happen. You're still there. You still show up. But you're not really present anymore. Conversations become shorter. Not because there's nothing to say, but because it feels like explaining yourself would take too much energy. You listen, but only halfway. You nod, but your mind is somewhere else. Not dreaming, not planning, just tired. And the distance doesn't arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly. Two people sitting on the same couch, both scrolling, both silent, both thinking the same thing. I don't have the energy for this right now. There's no big fight, no clear breaking point, just less touch, less laughter, less curiosity about each other, and eventually, less intimacy. Not because the desire disappeared overnight, but because exhaustion slowly replaces connection. When your mind is always full, your body follows. You don't feel unattracted. You feel unavailable. Unavailable to talk. Unavailable to feel. Unavailable to want. And this is where many relationships don't end. They fade. People often think relationships break because of betrayal or conflict. But most of them break because of neglect that no one notices until it's too late. Two people waiting for the other to have more energy tomorrow, but tomorrow keeps moving. And then one day, you realize something unsettling. You're not just tired of the relationship. You're tired of the version of yourself you've become inside it. The version that reacts instead of chooses. That survives instead of lives. That goes through motions instead of moments. You remember who you used to be, not in a dramatic way, just flashes. The way you laughed more easily, the way conversations felt lighter, the way life felt open, not heavy. And you wonder quietly, when did everything start feeling like maintenance? This is usually the moment people panic. They think something is wrong with them, or wrong with their partner, or wrong with the relationship. But often, what's wrong is the pace. A life built without space to breathe. When every day is about responsibility, efficiency, and endurance, there's no room left for presence. No room for intimacy. No room for desire. No room for meaning. You can't feel deeply when you're constantly depleted. And here's the part most people don't hear enough. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You are not failing. You are exhausted. Exhausted people don't need new relationships. They don't need dramatic changes. They don't need to escape their lives. They need rest. They need honesty. They need space to reconnect with themselves first. Because when you don't recognize yourself anymore, you stop showing up fully for others too. And maybe the solution isn't more effort. Maybe it's fewer expectations, fewer distractions, fewer excuses to ignore yourself, because you were never lost. You were just running on empty for far too long.